Hi there. Before we dive into the episode, we want to tell you about a fantastic biography for all of your reading pleasures. For the Golden Silent Films podcast, books and biographies are just as important to us as the films we discuss. The book we want to spotlight today is Barbara Lamar, The Girl Who Was Too Beautiful for Hollywood, written by Sherry Snyder and published by University Press of Kentucky. In the first full-length biography of the woman known as the Girl Who Was Too Beautiful, Sherry Snyder presents a complete portrait of one of the silent era's most infamous screen sirens. In 5 short years, Lamar appeared in 26 credited films, including The Prisoner of Zenda, Trifling Women, The Eternal City, The Shooting of Dan McGraw, and Thy Name is Woman. Yet by 1925, finding herself beset by numerous scandals, several failed marriages, a hidden pregnancy, and personal prejudices based on her on-screen persona, she fell out of public favor. When she was diagnosed with a fatal lung condition, she continued to work undeterred until she collapsed on set. She died at the age of 29. Few stars have burned as brightly and as briefly as Barbara Lamar, and her extraordinary life story is one of tempestuous passions as well as perseverance in the face of adversity. Drawing on never-before-released diary entries, correspondence, and creative works, Snyder's biography offers a valuable perspective on her contributions to silent-era Hollywood and the cinematic arts. We here at the podcast can't recommend this book enough and know you would love it as much as we do. If you want to check out Barbara Lamar, The Girl Who Was Too Beautiful for Hollywood by Sherry Snyder, head on over to Amazon. With just a couple of clicks, you will be transported back in time for an incredible life story. Around 1913, a group of prominent Spokane society girls met almost daily at the Davenport Hotel for tea. They called themselves the Little Women. Then disaster struck sisters Signe and Lillian Owen, 2 of the Little Women. Their father failed in business, forcing them to venture out into the world and fend for themselves. And boy did they ever fend, writes Jim Kirshner, reporter for the Spokane newspaper, the Spokesman Review. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Golden Silent Films podcast, where we are gathered here today to experience a theatrical life, a cinematic adventure to learn about an often overlooked star of the silent screen. So many lives have flickered before our eyes here and captured our imaginations, but this one seemed, especially worthy of a little bit of podcast time. This is a special biographical edition of the podcast where we are looking at the life of the incredibly talented Seena Owen. From Washington State to the silver screen via Denmark, Owen has done it all and been super stylish all the while. The name of Signe Auen isn't often on many lists covering the best of Hollywood, but she most definitely belongs, and we hope this episode will help that journey of making her a household name. A household name that emerged from more exotic spellings. Now, before we get too biographical, let's talk a bit about the Golden Silent Films podcast social media outlets. As usual, head on over to Golden Silence Cast on Instagram for up-to-date info on this little show. You can also find us on Bluesky at Golden Silence Cast, and for all of you folks on X or Twitter, just go to @GoldenSilence1 or search Golden Silence Cast and we should pop up. All of those screen names and sites will be in the episode description in case you want to check us out, and we would love to have you on board. At all of those social spaces, you'll get behind-the-scenes pics and info, upcoming episode reveals, and other fun film-related materials. And as always, cool photos of our official podcats, Soda and Gizmo, who live wildly fascinating lives in their own rights. Also, if you're listening to this program on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or Apple Music, leave reviews, ratings, or both. Our show's been around for over 5 years, and we've only gotten to 18 reviews on iTunes. We want to see that number keep growing, and you awesome silent film fans out there can definitely make it happen. Those ratings and reviews help a ton. So live your best review-leaving life and help our show grow and reach all of those fellow silent film fans out there. Dropping those reviews gives us more exposure in the world of podcasts and lets us know how we can improve. As always, we are so incredibly grateful for the feedback and always want to bring you the best show humanly possible. And do subscribe to the Golden Silent Films podcast. While our output can be a little bit spotty, if you are subscribed, you will never miss an episode, and the moment new content drops, it's going to go straight to your listening device of choice. And we would be remiss if we didn't mention our YouTube channel and its exclusive silent film content. Episodes of the podcast, obviously, are uploaded there, but there is also new and exclusive short-form content. Whether you're catching new episodes or you want to relive past movie discussions, just search for Golden Silent Films Podcast and we will pop right up for you. While we are talking about streaming and YouTube, please do us a solid and click on over and like and subscribe. And if I remember correctly, also hit that notification bell. It's all about engagement and algorithms with this streaming service. So a huge thank you goes out to all of you so very much for supporting us on all of these platforms. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I come across so many life stories in the production of this show. So many lifetimes flash before me as I navigate the vast historical databases of the internet. Even our crack research team here at the home office finds themselves overwhelmed by the sheer volume of lives. There really is so much to look at, so many rabbit holes for me to go down. One article might change the entire course and schedule of the podcast. No matter how big or small, I find stories that fascinate me to no end. Stories that compel me to share those stories with all of you fine listeners out there. It really breaks my heart to see how many of these lives are forgotten. And the worst part is that so many of these lives and stories deserve a dedicated podcast or YouTube episode. Unfortunately, there is just not enough time to commit them all to recordings. It really is sad, to be honest, and I legitimately feel all of these life stories deserve to be remembered and shared. And so, it really means something special when we decide to dedicate an entire episode to a full biographical rundown. So, with all of that in mind, we hope you find this life of a silent star as fascinating as we did. And maybe, just maybe, you'll be inspired to tell life stories that really capture your imaginations. A lot of what we will be discussing in this life story comes from accounts, reports, and interviews of the era. That doesn't mean there is nothing modern audiences can't take away from learning about this wildly talented individual. There is a lot to learn and take to heart, and I really believe the life and work of Signe Owen is just as meaningful to audiences of today as they were back in the day. With all of that in mind, and our sources from the past, it seemed only proper to get some insights from a scholar and writer of today. Mary Mallory, in her recently released book, First Women of Hollywood, Female Pioneers in the Early Motion Picture Business, Mallory shines a light, a much-deserved light, onto the women who really powered the earliest years of film. Signe Owen is totally one of those ladies who contributed so much to the industry, only to get the short end of the stick in the legacy department. Now, we here at the podcast were lucky enough to get a chance to chat a bit with Mary about this episode's spotlight star. The author explains, Signe Owen is a fascinating character, and like many in my book, resourceful, smart, and willing to take risks and break barriers. I know her mostly from appearing with von Stroheim in a role in films so unlike her real background. Von Stroheim really knew how to get at people's dark sides. Mary hits it right on the head there on a few different levels. That epic performance for von Stroheim opposite Gloria Swanson in the ill-fated Queen Kelly is fascinating in and of itself, but is also a big piece of the overall Signe Owen story. Working with Swanson and von Stroheim was the perfect, on paper, culmination of a career in which she worked with some of the biggest names the movie industry had to offer. We will dive more into that awesome career, but for now, let's roll it back to the very beginning. Signe Owen was born on November 14, 1894 in Spokane, Washington. Her oldest sister, Lillian, was born a few years earlier in St. Paul, Minnesota. And now you really couldn't tell, but at birth, her birth name was Signe Owen. That would be Signeauen. For all of you eagle-eyed listeners, this Nordic spelling is included in this episode's title and actually plays a part in how this cinematic life story unfolds. Signe was the youngest of three children born to Jens and Karen Owen. Her parents came from Denmark in the late 1880s and would settle in Minnesota, where they married in 1888. They weren't long for the Midwest and moved to Portland, Oregon, before eventually settling down in Spokane. It was there where her father became proprietor of the Columbia Pharmacy. As a child, Signe was educated in Spokane as well as Copenhagen, Denmark. Her life would change a bit on the financial side of things when, as a teen, the family business went out of business. This meant she would have to bring some cash into the household on her own. She received her early motivation to act while a student at the Pauline Dunstan Belden School of Elocution in Spokane. Signe recounts how that experience opened her eyes to acting. She explains, "I had taken elocution lessons from Pauline Dunstan Belden, and somehow she had put the stage bug into my head. Being an actress appealed to me more than being a stenographer or a nurse, so I decided to come to California to try my luck." This change of scenery led the youngster to the stage, where she appeared in a stock production in San Francisco, where she played the part of a maid for a mere $5 a week. While she had ambition and a sense of adventure, leaving her home was no easy decision. "It almost broke my heart to leave Spokane," Signe said. "I was born in Spokane. It was home to me and always will be. And I loved the girls. It wasn't easy to give up all my friends. I had been so spoiled, too. I was not prepared to earn a living and did not know which way to turn." Not long after that, she headed to Hollywood to work as a film extra, where she had the good fortune to run into actor-director Marshall Mickey Nealon, then a hot Hollywood commodity whom Owen had known in Spokane. Through Nealon, she was hired at the Calum Company, an early motion picture studio, at a solid $15 a week. Looking back, Signe explained, "I had known him, Nealon, in Spokane. He was lovely to me and took me out to a studio where he gave me a job at $15 a week. After that, I began to get some better roles, but it was a long, bitter struggle to stardom." As 1914 came to a close, the film career of Signe Owen was only just beginning. With only a few days left in the year, The Old Fisherman's Story would release on December 27, 1914. This was, as far as I could ascertain, the big screen debut of the Danish actress. Though the name doesn't really imply it, this film was described in papers of the time as a tragic love story. One of those newspaper write-ups reads, "The Class A theater has announced The Old Fisherman's Story, a two-reel majestic drama, as the headliner for a week starting Sunday." The scenes for this production were taken along the picturesque coast of California. The article continues, "The story deals with an old fisherman who has two sons. Ben, the elder, is a strong, fine-looking chap, while Ned, his brother, is a hunchback. Both Ben and Ned fall in love with the same girl, Mary Cresswood. Ben is the lucky one and marries Mary. The erstwhile Mary Cresswood in this story is played by Signe Owen, though in the credits she was still under the original spelling of her name. Regardless of spelling, though, this would be a very auspicious beginning to her career. This film is filled with, if the reports are to be believed, coastal drama, betrayal, and bittersweet death. All the makings for an inspirational feel-good movie of super positivity. Or maybe not. The article ends with, "A cheerful little thing, is it not?" Owen's ascent really started its upward trajectory in 1915. At this point, the 21-year-old was still working under her original name spelling of Signeauen, Signe Owen. But with exotic spellings or no, she was already doing some fine work with some pretty big names in the fledgling film industry. In The Highbinder, Signe acted under the directorial gaze of Tod Browning. This would be, I believe, the fourth film Tod Browning directed in his incredible career. This short crime film, lasting all of 2 reels. In this film, released on April 18, 1915, Signe would play the Chinese Ah Wu, a character who endures some pretty dramatic events in Chinatown. According to Real Life magazine, we read, "Maggie, daughter of Pat Gallagher, a brutal saloon keeper, takes refuge in a shop in Chinatown to escape being forced into marriage with a bully and protege of her father. The Chinese merchant who has given her shelter at last persuades her to marry him. She exchanges one miserable existence for another even worse." This description continues. Years later, Hop Wu the merchant sells his daughter Ah Wu along with Maggie into slavery. Ah Wu's brother, overhearing his father bartering with the Highbinder, who is a member of the powerful Hip Yi Tong Society, runs for help to Jack Donovan, an attractive young Irishman who keeps a gambling hall on the borders of Chinatown. The brother shoots and kills the slave dealer. Hop Wu is suspected of the crime and visited with the blood atonement by the infuriated Hip Yi Tong. Ah Wu is carried away prisoner. Her brother and Donovan, who loves the beautiful Chinese-American girl, rescues her from the Third Circle, the lowest of the underground passageways in Chinatown, and later, Donovan shoots dead the hounding Highbinders. Maggie, the mother, meanwhile has committed suicide. The young Irishman sells his establishment and buys a ranch where he takes his bride, Ah Woo, and her brother, the breakdown concludes. Now, the reviews for this film were genuinely pretty glowing and pretty offensive, so my apologies in advance. Motion Picture News on May 1st, 1915 would write, a two-reel drama set in the Chinese quarter of what is evidently a western city. The production, which has been staged by Todd Browning, is, to say the least, unique. A great many genuine Chinamen have taken part in the picture, which treats of the marriage of an unfortunately placed young woman to a Chinaman who was kind to her. The story skips several years, and the daughter of the couple is kidnapped for her beauty by a gang of Chinamen after they have killed her father. The production is thrilling and too rich in startling incidents to enumerate them here. It can also lay claim to having been artistically made. The review wraps up by saying, as a straight melodrama of the old school, this is a particularly fine bit of work. It consists of one thrill after another and should make a big hit. This film would be the first but not the last to feature Signe Owen playing a nationality or race not her own. That brings us to the next big swing from Signe in 1915, A Yankee from the West. Released on August 19, 1915, this flick would continue the trend of international characters and great performances from Signe. This flick, a silent romantic drama film directed by George Siegman and starring Wallace Reed, was a breakthrough role for the young actress. Moving Picture World, in its September 11, 1915 issue, thought pretty highly of the movie's acting, writing, Wallace Reed, Signe Owen, and Tom Wilson give vitality to their roles every moment they are in evidence on the screen, and they are materially assisted by those who play in minor parts, indicating a wisdom of choice on the part of Mr. Siegman. Despite a talent for playing other characters from around the world, she could also hold her own as an all-American girl as well. The movie-going public would get that chance to see her in The Lamb. This production, featuring Signe in a starring role opposite Douglas Fairbanks, was released in the fall of 1915. Up to this point in our story, we have spent quite a bit of time talking about the variety of nationalities portrayed by the up-and-coming actress. That constant change in roles was something that really appealed to Owen on an artistic front. In fact, she was asked what roles she liked the best, and I bet you can guess her answer. In an issue of Photoplay magazine from March of 1916, we get to go straight to the source. Signe Owen would tell the magazine, what kind of parts do I like best? I'll tell you. I like to play roles involving different nationalities. This gives me a chance to peep into all sorts of characteristics and is vastly educational too. Because when you play a Turkish girl, for instance, you must know exactly what a Turkish girl looks like, what her conventions are, how she dresses, what and when she eats, and something of her prejudices and traditions. I have already played a Japanese girl in The Foxwoman and had a delightful time studying the Japanese in their native haunts in their quarter of the city. I met one particular little geisha girl, alluring and intelligent, and while she did not belong to the class of my Foxwoman, still I gained much from her. Repression being the keynote of the Japanese character. Their gestures are angular, repressed, but always gentle. Their faces are trained to express pleasure and kindred emotions, but rarely sorrow or pain. The actress continues, in The Yankee from the West, I played a Swedish immigrant. As I am a Danish girl, of course, I have seen many such, and was glad when I had to play the role that I had many of their small mannerisms tucked away in my memory. They have shy little ways and often stooped, thick bodies. In The Penitents, I played a Spanish girl, but not the traditional Spanish girl, a free, wild little creature. And in The Lamb, of course, I played a straight American girl. While she jumped from role to role, slowly building up her showbiz resume, it was only a matter of time, though, until a decision had to be made about her name. The truth is that it's a super cool, super Danish name, but its spelling, Signeauen, was also truly difficult to sell to the general moving-going crowds. If I didn't know already how the name was pronounced, it would be a hard name to instinctively know how to say, and that confusion can only multiply when it's on papers and movie marquees. Hollywood has always been about easy to remember and say names, and as Signe learned, hers was a bit problematic. A new name was in order, but her stage name wouldn't ultimately end up being that much of a change, at least phonetically. Turning back to that previous Photoplay article, Signe explains, when I first went to work, I thought it lent distinction to have an unusual name. That was when I went on the stage in San Francisco at the Alcazar. But when at the end of the first week I signed for my salary and the manager frowned on my signature and said, "Why, child, that's not a name. It's a high sign in a secret order of blackhanders or something." I thought I was lost forever so far as the stage was concerned, but I didn't know what to do about it. And when I went into pictures, I found it worse than ever. Press agents stumbled over it. Publicity people and newspapers would have none of it. It was too hard. So I just spelled it the way it's pronounced, and everyone's happy. It's a Danish name. Speaking of working with some big names and some big projects, that brings us into 1916 and one of her highest profile of appearances. Signe Owen portrayed everyone's favorite Princess Beloved, the favorite of Belshazzar, in D.W. Griffith's directed Intolerance. This film was released in the U.S. on September 5th, 1916. If you aren't familiar with this film, it is a series of stories and vignettes and segments, each telling a tale, as the movie tagline tells us, of love's struggle through the ages. It was a bit of a winding road, though, that led Signe Owen to her cinematic Babylon. In the Spokane newspaper, The Spokesman Review, reporter Jim Kirshner explains how Signe almost lost that plum role. Kirshner writes, "The co-screenwriter of The Lamb was D.W. Griffith, who was making movie history that same year with The Birth of a Nation. According to Hollywood legend, Griffith was at first unimpressed with what he called Signe's cool composure and told her that she was too unemotional to be an actress. She answered, 'Then I am an actress because I am trembling inside.' Griffith immediately hired her for his company." Kirshner continues, "That story may have been embellished by publicists, but Signe soon became one of Griffith's top actresses. Some sources claim it was Griffith who urged her to change her name to Signe Owen." Now, the 4 parallel storylines featured in Intolerance are each separated by several centuries. First, there is a contemporary melodrama of crime and redemption. Second is a biblical story focusing on Christ's mission and death. Third, a French story following the events surrounding the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre of 1572. And fourth, a Babylonian story covering the fall of the Babylonian Empire to Persia in 539 BC. Now, it's in that ancient Babylonian segment where we get to see Signe Owen in action, acting opposite Constance Talmadge and Alfred Paget as the previously mentioned Prince Belshazzar. The movie had its fair share of issues, true, but Signe was not one of them. Kirshner explains, "The movie was a bomb. Audiences just didn't understand it. But it represented the artistic peak of Signe Owen's career, even though she was only 22 at the time." Now, this role really led to a lot of great things for Signe on all fronts. Professionally, financially, and relationshipally. That's a word, right? Signe would say of those early monetary gains, "I was on stage only a week. Then I got my chance in pictures with Mr. Griffith and have been with him ever since. And I received $5 for that week's work on stage. The first money I ever earned, and how big it looked. I remember thinking I could not possibly spend it all. I bought mother some gloves, sister a necktie, and myself a box of preserved ginger. I had never in my life before had all the preserved ginger I wanted." Another fascinating story would come out of Owen's time on the set of Intolerance, but we will save that for our short-form content on our YouTube channel. While we are on the topic, after this episode ends, head on over to the channel and like, subscribe, and hit those notification bells. That way, when we drop our Signe Owen side story, you'll be the first to know. We are trying to hit 100 subscribers and would love to see you join us. Now, the third component of Signe's big 1916 came on the romance front. She would marry American actor George Walsh, whom she met on the set of the aforementioned Intolerance. He appeared in the biblical Judean story and played, appropriately enough, the bridegroom. The couple had one child, a daughter named Patricia. The two would remain married for 8 years before divorcing in 1924. Well, legally married, that is. Things started going downhill for the couple a few years earlier. Now, this legal uncoupling would come with its fair share of scandal and tabloid fodder. From accusations of infidelity to alleged domestic violence, newspapers ran wild, and their reports only stoked the flames of the divorce proceedings. According to Jim Kirshner, we read, "The Los Angeles Times ran a series of stories in 1922 detailing all the tawdry charges, including Signe's account of the day at New York's Plaza Hotel, in which she found a love letter to Walsh from another actress. Walsh grabbed for the letter and a tussle ensued, but Seena locked herself and the letter in the bathroom. According to one much later account, Walsh claimed that Seena tried to kill him. Like many of her counterparts, Signe Owen's filmography has had a good number of lost films as well. Not every film she appeared in was a mega production like Intolerance. Looking at her filmography, there were some very interesting productions I would totally love to see. Productions like Intolerance that were helmed by some of the big name directors of the day. As all of you out there I am sure know, a vast number of silent films are lost to the sands of time and the flames of nitrate. Signe Owen's filmography would not be immune to having more than a handful of missing and presumed lost films. One example of a Signe Owen lost film is a western by the name of Riders of Vengeance, released on June 9, 1919. This lost western boasted some very well-known names behind and in front of the camera. It was written and directed by John Ford, and Seena appeared as the female lead opposite Harry Carey. This film was a pretty tried-and-true revenge picture, and according to reports, was incredibly violent. The story sees Harry's bride murdered at their wedding along with his mother and father. This, understandably, causes the good-hearted outlaw to set out on his own Death Wish-esque quest for vengeance. He leaves town, only to return 1 year later to stalk his wife's killers one by one. As a lover of revenge films and movies with twists and turns, it seems like a pretty big bummer to have this one be long gone. Now, Riders of Vengeance was released as a Universal special feature and had a running time of 60 minutes over the course of 6 reels. It was part of the decades-long-running Cheyenne Harry series of films starring Harry Carey. This film was one of a few collabs between the Western icon Harry Carey and the legendary film director John Ford. Since this is a lost film, we can never know exactly how Signe Owen performed, but reviews of the time found the film generally well received and enjoyed. So, how about we chalk that one up as a win for Signe Owen? Let's move our cinematic eyes from the Wild West to an island in the South Seas and check out another notable production on the resume of Signe Owen. Victory was released on December 7th, 1919, and was directed by Maurice Tournier and starred Jack Holt, Signe Owen, Lon Chaney, Wallace Beery, and Bull Montana. This adventure flick was an adaptation of the 1915 novel by Joseph Conrad, but it definitely had a really star-studded cast, right? In the film, Owen plays Alma opposite Jack Holt's Axel. The film introduces us to Alma, telling us, if you took Madame Zan Giacomo's word for it, Alma, the first violin, was a stubborn, good-for-nothing hussy. Alright, so technically we're introduced by the mean old band leader and boss of sweet, demure Alma. The film plays out following Axel Heist, an uncommitted wanderer who settled on an island in the South Seas. He takes pity on the troubled young woman Alma and gives her refuge on his island. But a movie plot is never really that simple, is it? That all leads us to the introduction of the criminally murderous Mr. Jones and his henchmen, played by Lon Chaney and Bull Montana respectively, as they follow Axel, thinking he has various treasures and other loots to be plundered. And a pretty girl to take also, don't forget the pretty girl. They soon invade the peaceful island, and the film really at that point kicks into gear. The three, pirates for all intents and purposes, arrive on Axel's island, and while he initially extends his hospitality to them, he realizes they are plotting to kill him, rob his house, and take Alma away with them. A fight erupts and Axel kills one goon by shooting him off the roof of his house. Mr. Jones ends up getting killed by one of his own gang members in retaliation for a betrayal earlier in the film. Axel and Alma realize their love for each other, obviously, because this is a movie, and decide to get married and live happily ever after on the island after doing away with the criminals. This was such a fun movie to watch. Actually, let me rephrase that. It was such a fun Paramount Art Craft special to watch. It had all you could ask for in the way of thrills and chills. And if you want to catch this awesome flick, look no further than YouTube. Signe Owen was so incredibly charming in this film. While she doesn't get in on a lot of the action, her character really gets to experience a wide range of emotions. This film is the perfect vehicle for the gorgeous and incredibly emotive eyes of Signe Owen. She really conveys so much with her face and really pulls the viewer into the adventure. And the chemistry between Signe and Jack Holt was a highlight of the movie as well. As the two get closer on screen, you get a A real bloom of character from Signe Owen. She really opens up as the story is told, and Alma, who started off as shy and demure, really grows and becomes the highlight of the movie. One of my favorite scenes comes about halfway into the picture. This comes after the two escape to Heist's personal island getaway of Samburan. The intertitle reads, "Somewhat piqued at Heist's attitude toward women, Alma tried to wound him after the fashion of Eve with her beauty. Signe is at her most charming, trying to get the attention of her paramour. There is such a great chemistry here as we get a little bit of lore and backstory into Jack Holt's Axel Heist. The two really connect at this point in the film. Alma wants it to be more than just friendship with a man who feels sorry for her. As a viewer, both with her facial expressions and body movements, you see Axel being won over to the side of love. It's a short bit, but still a great look into the talent and charisma of Signe Owen. She really becomes, if just for one scene, the lead of the film. And that is just one of many bits that really made me a Signe Owen fan. And I can't recommend Victory enough. And getting to see this talented actress act alongside the legendary Lon Chaney is super cool to see as well. Critics and trade papers also really enjoyed the film. Moving Picture World called it an original and interesting picture, picturesque in detail, splendid types, a refreshing change from the conventional in nearly all respects. A damsel in distress like Alma is but one type of role that Signe had the talent to play. Over the course of a whole career, she would portray a wide range of characters. Like any actress, though, she had her preferences. Turning back to that interview from Photoplay magazine, Signe explains, "Now, please don't laugh, and I'll tell you something. I love vampire parts. Managers always laugh at me when I say that, but I'll tell you what I mean. There are fashions in vampires, and the old sort, with the accented toilettes, the obvious allurements, the made-to-order working of the eyes, is all out of date. The real vampire dresses quietly, keeps away from all obviousness, and appears quite natural in everything she does. She uses her body, of course, but so subtly that a man never knows he's being vamped until he's fairly caught. Also, there's the intellectual vampire, who holds men nowadays through the power and force of intellect, apparently, but of course she uses this only as an added power. To portray such a character calls for real genius, and that is why I want to play them." That, folks, is the perfect quote and perfect segue to one of Signe Owen's greatest performances, which, incidentally, was that of a vamp. If you are going to be inspired by this episode to explore the existing filmography of Signe Owen, then there is no better place to start than with her tour de force performance in 1922's Back Pay. With all due respect to the other players in this photo play, it really is a one-woman show. Her character rides a wild roller coaster of emotions throughout the film. It truly is a memorable experience for actor and viewer alike. Back Pay, directed by Frank Borzaghi, was released on January 8, 1922, and starred Owen and Matt Moore. If you were a newspaper reader back in 1922, you'd have read an ad that explained, "The woman pays, but what part of the reckoning does she owe?" Back Pay takes a typical American girl and confronts her with the question of how to secure her birthright to happiness. Tempted from within and without, but more than anything else, tempted and tortured by the question, what does society condemn me for seizing what society offers? It's a pretty sensational ad that really should make you want to check this flick out. It's a solid description that accurately portrays the story in front of us. In this film, Signe Owen plays Hester Bevins, a simple country girl who craves adventure. At home in her small town of Demopolis, she has a handsome young man, Jerry, who is hopelessly devoted to her. Despite his love and adoration, she leaves her village and goes to the bright lights of New York in search of a grander life. And by grander, I mean a way more expensive and lavish lifestyle. There she becomes the lover of a wealthy and crooked businessman. Hester soon must confront the horrors of World War I, when Jerry returns blind and dying from various war injuries. This means Hester must choose between her new life and the man whose loyalty to her has never failed. Needless to say, she made the right decision, but what a glass case of emotions it was getting there. There's so much awesomeness about Signe's performance here. Hester Bevins started off the movie being pretty unlikable. As the picture progressed, my feelings toward her character slowly started to change. For a good chunk of the movie, I was actively rooting against her. She really was believable as a money-obsessed vamp and lady in the big city. It was never over the top or super villainy, just a realistic portrayal of a gal who sought the finer things in life at the expense of love right in front of her. I don't tend to get very emotional whilst watching movies, but seeing Hester's heartbreak as she sits at the deathbed of Jerry certainly tugged at a few heartstrings. Her transformation from money grubber to heartbroken but inspired woman really came across as genuine and really had me on her side rooting for her redemption. Signe Owen killed it in this flick, and I cannot recommend it enough. So, let's take our leave from the screen for a bit and dip back into the life of Signe Owen as she navigates the highs and lows of life. And by highs and lows, I'm talking about temperatures, degrees, and cold locales. In a note from Luella Parsons in the Morning Telegraph in early 1923, we learned that New York is too cold for Signe, Parsons writes. Last week she up and packed her belongings and moved to Montreal, where the weather is, just a moment, gentle readers, about 10 times colder than New York. So now she is enjoying herself, skating, tobogganing, and skiing. Just like a woman, isn't it? Another lost film on the resume of Signe Owen came in Unseen Eyes. This action drama was originally released on November 18, 1923. This film was produced by magnate William Randolph Hearst and distributed by Goldwyn Pictures. Edward H. Griffith was at the helm of the film, which starred Lionel Barrymore, Signe Owen, Louis Walheim, and Gustav von Seifritz. I am bringing up this film because of some harrowing behind-the-scenes filming that occurred during making of this incredibly ambitious film. It was filmed partially on location at the Grey Rocks Resort in the Laurentian Mountains in western Canada. Additional scenes were said to have been filmed and shot at Lake Louise in Banff National Park. But let's focus on the time spent in the mountains of Canada. In an article from the May 27, 1923 issue of New York Times, we read, "The Cosmopolitan Company recently filmed scenes of motion pictures 10,000 feet above the sea level when making Unseen Eyes, a screen adaptation of Arthur Stringer's story Snowblind. One of the big scenes is an airplane flight through the Canadian Rockies, and in making this special sequence, E.H. Griffith, the director, had the services of flying experts and 2 400-horsepower planes. 10 days were spent making the flying scenes, and the airplanes carried not only Lionel Barrymore and Signe Owen, but 10 drums of high-test gas, snowshoes, axes, and provisions. Had either of the airplanes met with an accident, the players might have been marooned in the snow-peaked mountains. Thankfully, the film's production ended without any alive-type shenanigans for the cast and crew of Unseen Eyes, which is always a good thing. No one needs cannibalism. That wouldn't be, though, the actress's last dents with potential death. 3 years later, the China Mail newspaper would report Signe Owen, the actress, narrowly escaped death at San Pedro when she fell off a ship while making a motion picture. A sailor leaped overboard and dragged her from the water. Now, this story was reported in the April 7, 1926 edition of the periodical. Let's rewind back a couple of years, though, and talk a bit of scandal and controversy that Signe found herself in. Unlike the divorce drama, this time Signe was but a mere guest on a boat ride from hell. The particular cruise I am speaking of saw a host of Hollywood heavyweights take to the seas only for one to come back on his deathbed. That soon-to-be dead heavyweight was producer extraordinaire Thomas Ince. The April 4, 1999 edition of the Los Angeles Times sets the scene for us. Cecilia Rasmussen writes, "Then came the apparently innocent outing that would plunge Ince's reputation into the netherworld of innuendo and salacious rumor. On November 16, 1924, Ince boarded Press Lord William Randolph Hearst's yacht, the Oneida, to celebrate his own birthday and the signing of a major contract to produce and distribute the films of actress Marion Davies, Hearst's longtime mistress. Other guests included comedian Charlie Chaplin, racy Edwardian novelist Eleanor Glynn, actress Signe Owen, and the head of Hearst Cosmopolitan magazine, Dr. Daniel Carson Goodman." So, before we take our little detour into mystery and tragedy, a bit of a spoiler warning and clarification, I guess. Signe Owen was never implicated or even close to any death on the boat, whether natural or unnatural. She just happened to be on the yacht when the tabloid and conspiracy fodder went down. So, since Signe was just a bystander, I'm going to kind of zoom through the details. But this particular boat ride is definitely worthy of its own episode, no doubt. At this point in his life, Ince was not the model of health. He was a hard-driving guy who paid little attention to his body. In fact, he was already in pretty rough shape when the yacht set sail. According to Cecilia Rasmussen, we learn, while still at sea, Ince, who already was vomiting blood, suffered a heart attack. The Oneida put into San Diego and Ince was sent home by train. 2 more heart attacks quickly followed, and 2 days later, the 42-year-old Ince died in bed at Dia Dorados, the Spanish-style hacienda he shared with his wife on 30 acres in Benedict Canyon. Nell Ince and the couple's 2 sons were at the filmmaker's bedside when he passed away. Now, the mysterious and hush-hush removal, though, of Ince from the yacht and subsequent death set the rumor mill ablaze. Some people at the time said Hearst discovered Charlie Chaplin and Davies getting physical, and in an attempt to murder Chaplin, Hearst accidentally shot Ince. Others thought it was Ince and Davies making out, pushing the newspaper magnate over the edge and shooting Ince. And that was just the tip of the iceberg. Newspapers were having a field day with all of this. And, like I mentioned, Seena was completely outside of the situation. But she knew how to play the game. Mary Mallory explains, like many on the Hearst boat, she knew to keep quiet and toe the line. Now, going back to the less death-focused world, her last 2 film jobs came in 1929 and 1932, respectively. Now, did they come out during those years? Did they come out as complete films? That, folks, is an interesting question, and for one of them, the answers might surprise you. Now, the boat ride wasn't the only thing Seena was involved in that deserves its own full-length episode. She was also a lead in one of the most infamous film productions of the silent era. Earlier in the episode, author Mary Mallory touched on Queen Kelly, so let's dive into that hefty topic now. And again, we'll kind of be skimming over it in the interest of time, and our focus will be on Seena's role in the production. If you're unfamiliar with Queen Kelly, you're not alone. In fact, I was only aware of this film from its quick blink and you'll miss it appearance in Sunset Boulevard. Imagine my surprise when I tried to find it, only to learn it exists in partial forms and has a backstory for the ages. Here is that backstory, though, in a slightly abbreviated form. The film was directed by Erich von Stroheim, and it was going to be his epic, legacy-making super film that would surely be an all-time great. It starred Gloria Swanson in the title role, with Walter Byron as her lover, Prince Wolfram, and of course Signe Owen. In its originally planned form, Queen Kelly was going to be a 5-hour epic, which for von Stroheim could kind of be considered short. This troubled production was filmed in 1928 and 1929, but wouldn't be released until 1932. Or at least some sort of release in 1932, and a Swanson-approved version released in the 60s, and yet more versions were released in the following decades. Now, the film was produced by Joseph P. Kennedy, who was Swanson's lover at the time. As budgets grew out of control and disagreements with Swanson behind the scenes grew louder and louder, the production of the film was eventually shut down. The tales from this doomed production are pretty wild and totally worth a deep dive on their own. But we are here to look at the life of Signe Owen, so let's pull our focus back to the Mad Queen that Seena portrayed. Let's just focus on the first and best half of the film. Prince Wolfram is betrothed to the Mad Queen Regina V of Kronberg, and it's Seena playing this Mad Queen. Seeing her in this role was mind-blowing. I've watched quite a few Signe Owen pictures in service to this episode, and I've enjoyed each and every one, but this one was different. Her performance in Queen Kelly was like nothing she had ever done before. Stroheim does incredible work setting the scene for the character of Queen Regina. In true show-don't-tell fashion, her personality is laid out for the audience. In an article for Sense of Cinema, Michael Kohler takes us through the awesome visuals of that opening scene. Kohler writes, Stroheim's film opens early one morning in Queen Regina V's bedchamber. The Mad Queen appears nude except for her draped pussycat, intoxicated and gently swaying, and is introduced via a series of intertitles indicating she is vain, self-indulgent, cruel, knowing no law but her own desires, and possessed by a jealous passion for Prince Wolfram. These intertitles are reinforced by a series of shots indicating she is lewd, with Boccaccio's body Decameron being on her table, a drunk, a bottle in a champagne bucket decorated with nude figurines, that she takes drugs, Veronal, a sleeping tablet, and was an emancipated, a seemingly negative trait in domineering woman with cigars in her ashtray. Statues of naked figures and paintings of nude women decorate her bedroom and the rest of the palace. As punishment for partying with other women, Walter Byron's Wolfram is sent out on maneuvers. He sees Kitty Kelly, played here by Gloria Swanson, walking with other convent students, and he begins flirting with her. She is embarrassed when he makes a comment after seeing that her underwear is visible. So she takes it off and throws it at him, to the horror of the nuns, obviously, who punish her for her indecency. But this only captivates the prince even more. Her beauty, her attitude, causes him to charmingly kidnap her that night from the convent, take her to his room, and where he professes his love for her. When the queen finds them together the next morning, she whips Kelly and throws her out of the castle. Regina then puts Wolfram in prison for not wanting to marry her. Signe Owen ended her time in the silent era with a bang. She was acting out of her mind in the film, literally and figuratively, and I loved every second of it. She really brought an air of madness, aggression, and unpredictability to the role and the story that was vital in setting the plot in motion. The scene of her whipping Kitty Kelly throughout the halls of the castle is still incredibly vivid in my mind, all these weeks after watching the film for the first time. Now, it's the first half of the Queen Kelly film that is great, and Signe is a big component of that success. Now, despite being a fixture in Hollywood productions for many years, Spokane never left the mind and heart of Signe. Earlier in her career, the Washington native once said, "I miss Spokane, especially the girls. They are the keenest girls I've ever met. I think they dress better than girls in any other city, too. I expect to go to Alaska soon to begin work on my next picture. When I do, Mother and I are going to stop in Spokane for a visit. We're both dying to go back." Now, if any of this episode has given you a curiosity about watching Signe Owen movies, definitely give this one a watch. Well, the first half at least. It has so many great performances in it, and you will not be disappointed. As I mentioned, Queen Kelly was Signe's last hurrah on the silent screen. Unfortunately, she would only have one talkie under her belt before retiring from the screen altogether. Luckily for us, though, that lone sound film is available to watch. Just open up YouTube and search for Officer 13, released on November 26, 1932. This is an interesting film for us here at the Golden Silent Films podcast for a couple of reasons. First, it stars Lila Lee, a favorite of the podcast, opposite Signe Owen. Actually, all three leads, the two ladies plus star Monty Blue, were all regulars of the silent era, doing work early in the sound era. It's always a pleasure to see and hear Lila Lee, but hearing Signe for the first time was really special. Officer 13 was the last Signe Owen film I watched as I researched this episode, and it worked out perfectly as it was her first and last sound picture, and last movie appearance overall for that matter, a perfect cinematic bow to wrap this Signe Owen experience up with. This police and crime drama was directed by George Melford and stars Monty Blue as Officer Tom Burke, Lee as Doris Dane, and Charles Delaney as ill-fated Officer Sandy Malone, in addition to Signe Owen as crime lord Trixie Dubray. While we're chatting about casting, this film also features an early performance from future star Mickey Rooney in a supporting role. This is one of the future legend's first roles as a child, actually. Now, the plot of this movie is pretty straightforward. After Tom Burke's partner, motorcycle officer Sandy Malone, is killed in the line of duty, he quits the police force and vows to hunt down the group responsible. The film is about an hour long, and it takes about 55 minutes for us to finally see Trixie Dubray on screen. As I mentioned, this performance as Trixie Dubray would be the final on-screen credit for the actress. As the sound revolution started to take hold, it would be Owen's voice, which some say held her back. As a lifelong listener of voices, I'd say she had a pretty good one deserving of some more on-screen work, but unfortunately, that was not how things would go down, and she would be retired by 1933. Don't worry, folks, though. It's not all doom and gloom for Signe. Far from it, actually. In fact, Signe was ready to write her next chapter, or screenplay, as the case may be. Before we get into the writing credits of Signe, let's take a minute to connect with her eldest sister, Lillian. Lillian Owen, who is now Lillian Hayward at this point in life, was incredibly prolific in the movie world. In the late teens and early 20s, she was already working at numerous studios as a musician, script editor, and screenwriter. Let's turn back to Jim Kirshner for a little more Lillian lore. Kirshner takes us through a few of her written works, produced over multiple decades. Kirshner writes, Lily's list of movies encompasses B movies such as Nightclub Scandal and Expensive Husbands in the 30s, animal-oriented family movies like My Friend Flicka, Banjo, Smokey, and Black Beauty in the 1940s, and Disney movie and TV productions such as The Shaggy Dog, Toby Tyler, and The Mickey Mouse Club in the 50s and 60s. I am more than familiar with quite a few of those. It's always super fun to learn about these connections that I never knew I had to silent film. Kirshner continues, Lily delivered her last script in 1962. But even in 2006, if you looked closely at the credits for the Tim Allen remake of The Shaggy Dog, you would have seen Lily Hayward credited for the original screenplay. After her on-screen retirement, Seena transitioned to a screenwriter as well for a number of films in the 30s and 40s. In 1941, the two screenwriting sisters would actually join forces and collaborate on their only joint venture, the Dorothy Lamour epic, Aloma of the South Seas. In this picture, Seena is credited for the story, while both get co-credits on the screenplay. Seena would also write another Dorothy Lamour film, 1944's Rainbow Island. Another credit came in the 1942 film, The Great Man's Lady, starring Barbara Stanwyck and Joel McCrea. The last screenwriting credit for Signe Auen came in 1947. As we lay this episode to rest, it is time to find out where your favorite silent stars are laid to rest. This is the segment where we join our favorite cinematic stars on the other side of the cemetery gates. The history, the art, the celebrity spectacle converge, and where are they now? Your guide to paying your respects to the multi-talented actresses that have entertained us so much. The August 19 edition of the New York Times didn't go especially out of its way to inform readers of the life just lost. As we've seen in past episodes, the New York Times had the ability to really go all out. But much like Seena's legacy, her accolades were allowed to drift away again as the world-famous paper went to press with a mere wire report. The Times would run a pretty bare-bones obit from the UPI that read, Signe Owen, who appeared in films starring William S. Hart, Elmo Lincoln, and Lionel Barrymore, died Monday in the Hollywood Presbyterian Hospital at the age of 71. The obituary continues, in the early day of movie making, Miss Owen arrived here from Spokane, Washington, to play in films directed by D.W. Griffith, John Ford, and Henry King. She retired in 1933, thereafter living quietly in Studio City. A daughter, Miss Patricia Walsh Noonan, and a sister, Miss Lily Hayward, survive. Owen would be laid to rest in the historic Hollywood Forever Cemetery. If you are on the lookout, eagle-eyed cemetery explorers can seek out the Abbey of the Psalms Mausoleum, Sanctuary of Refuge G2, East Wall Crypt 2130. Now, I personally think it's pretty jive that a talent such as Signe Owen got so shortchanged when her story was needed the most. I love making this show because we get to give these great stars another chance for their memories and stories to live on a little longer. So, go home, turn on that television of yours, and fire up a Signe Owen movie today. Let's let this great actress and her legacy live again, even if just for an hour or so. And with that, it is time to wrap up our little podcast version of Signe Owen, This Is Your Life. What a great find and fascinating story and adventure it was. The silent era had its share of larger-than-life personalities, so it's always cool to do that little extra digging and find a hidden gem like Signe Owen. There are a ton of movie podcasts out there, and I want to thank you for spending your infotainment time with us and learning about some of these remarkable people. Did you enjoy this walk down biography lane? What are some of your favorite Signe Owen moments in movies? Have you changed the spelling of your name before embarking on a successful Hollywood career? Tell us all of that and more at the various social media spots of the Golden Silent Films podcast. So on that note, if you have forgotten, we're on Instagram, Bluesky, and Twitter. Let us know what you thought of this episode. What silent and silent-related movies, past or present, do you want us to look at next? Our world of silent movie knowledge and experience is constantly expanding, and we need your input for our future episodes here and beyond. You can always find us at Golden Silence Cast on Instagram and Bluesky, and at Golden Silence 1 on Twitter, and now on YouTube. And again, if you listen to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, or any other podcast outlet that allows it, subscribe, rate, and review. And if you're watching on YouTube, like, subscribe, and comment. It does a lot for our visibility, and we love hearing your thoughts and ideas. We really, really, really appreciate all of your incredible support, And seeing how much you folks are listening only makes us want to make bigger, better, and more epic episodes. So as these end credits start to roll, a huge thank you goes out to all of you fine listeners for all of your time listening. And don't forget, the silents are golden, and the talkies, they're just a fad.